the heels of M21 is Jumpstart, a set that not only brings a slew of new cards into the game, but also a whole new way to play. Leaning into the spirit of innovation, we also find a plethora of new spins and fresh takes on many a Magic trope, some of which are very special indeed. Welcome to Magic the Flavouring, the Magic the Gathering podcast. We talk about everything Magic flavour, design and lore. I'm your host, Andy Mann.
Hello, this is Nathan Cancel.
And we are going to be talking about Jumpstart today, the product that we will probably never get our hands on, unfortunately. Because obviously due to all the grubbiness with COVID-19 and just people not being in game shops and print runs being disrupted, it's all gone a little bit to shit for this plucky little product. But we know the cards. We've got the card lists out, so we can talk about that. And yes, I mean, it's looking pretty sweet, right? As like a set.
Oh, god, yeah, it looks really cool. Like at first, I was like, when it first released, I was like, okay, so it's just gonna be like a glorified like Pack Wars kind of thing. But yeah, they've got some real spice. They've really expanded on some things that I didn't think they were going to. Some tribes, some mechanics have been given some extra boost. It is a massive shame that these might not be in great circulation because some of these cards are like the first of their kind to do a thing. And they like fan favorite things, and especially like when it comes to say like the lands.
Yeah. I mean that's the thing, isn't it? Like they might just decide to do another print run of it, and I mean I never quite know the print runs of things. Sometimes I'll think something's an unlimited print run, and then I find out it's only got a short space of time, or sometimes they get pushed back and rah. So hopefully, yeah, they'll kind of flip it all around. And before we dive too much into things, I want to give you a little update on the ice cream van scenario.
Great, good. Chapter 2.
Only because when I said last week, people out there, tell me about your ice cream van situations. Tell me what's going on so I don't look like a dickhead. I actually did get people telling me about what time their ice cream vans come around, and around the world as well. So I've had quite a few American listeners contact us on social, and I mean there's no consensus. This is the infuriating thing. I'm right to be angry, but then I do also have other people going, oh no, that's normal. So I've had people tell me that residential areas or in parks, I mean it seems to be in America that they mostly hang around parks. I say hang around, making it sound nefarious. Not all ice cream vans are nefarious.
Why did you say not all of them? Hopefully none of them are.
I mean there's always rotten apples in every industry, Nathan. I'm not going to get too deep into it. But yeah, like, so some people have said, like, yeah, 8:00 in the evening is bonkers, who's buying ice creams? And then other people will go, no, that's normal, shut the fuck up, you whingy little bastard. So, you know, okay. I've had both ends of the scale. So there's no satisfactory closing to this. There's no vindication. It's just,
well, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel like yeah, exactly. You're allowed to be angry if you find it perturbing. The fact you have two different ones is the funny thing, I think.
Yeah, like competing businesses.
Yeah, I do know what you mean.
I'm a little bit of a grumpus when it comes to annoying noises anyway. Like, I'm the kind of person that when a car drives by my flat, I'm looking out the window going, who's got a muffler on their car? What kind of dickhead drives a car like that?
You're such an old man.
I know. So there we go. I apologise to anyone that likes eating their ice creams late in the evening, but also at the same time, you are fucking mental. And that's it. That's all I wanted to say. So Jumpstart, getting back to it. Something I noticed about Jumpstart is that it's one of the first times that I have seen Wizards kind of base a product off of another game so clearly. So there's two other products out there, two other card games that could be compared to Jumpstart in terms of their format. One of them is Keyforge, which is another Richard Garfield game, right?
I think LSV plays a bit of it, I think.
Yeah. So the whole design of that is that you just open a deck out of a pack and it's a pre-made thing and you just go. So it's very similar to Jumpstart. And then there's another game called Smash Up, which Tolarian Community College, the YouTube channel, recently did a gameplay video of that as well, a how-to. And that is a very similar thing where you take two decks of two different tribes in this game, you smush them together, and you just go. But it's all like a pre-packaged, pre-boxed thing. So with Jumpstart, if you don't know what Jumpstart is, a little kind of rundown on it is that you get a booster box like you would any other set, and each booster pack has a predetermined deck list in it. And there are several different tribes across Magic, or flavors that they've kind of built in. So you have like goblin packs and unicorn packs and flyers packs and a mill theme pack and all this kind of thing, on and on and on. And you take these booster packs, you rip them open, and you put 2 booster packs together to create a deck. And there are lands included already. And the idea is that, you know, wacky combinations can happen and synergies can happen, which you wouldn't have thought of before. Yeah. Each of these boosters has an outer foil, like a regular booster pack, but then they also have an inner foil, which tells you what is going to be your booster pack, right? So you could just do it completely blind. You could rip off both of them without knowing what's going on, or you can take the outer foil off, see what all the tribes are, and then try things out. And then another thing to note is that some of the tribes have multiple deck lists, and some of them only have 1. So it kind of increases the variance. So the goblins, for example, have 4 separate deck lists, and some of them are considered rarer than others because they've got rarer cards. And then something like unicorns, for example, I believe only has 1. Yeah. Because there's only so many unicorns in Magic, and you can only really reprint so many into this set or print new ones without it just becoming like the whole thing.
They could have done like an equestrian one where they mix, but they've done everything monocolored, so I don't think it would have worked. Because you could have done like an equestrian pack, which would have had a mix of unicorns and different horses and things like that. But yeah, I mean, realistically, there are only so many horny horses out there, unfortunately.
Horny horses, exactly.
This does remind me a little bit of Unsanctions, because they obviously did that last year where they had 5 30-card pre-constructed decks, again monocolored, designed to just break them open and bust them against each other. So they obviously had a little bit of preamble. Obviously, the Unsanctioned was with silver border cards, but it's a kind of similar thing of where they had some reprints with new borders and a new, not new artwork, but at least like the new framework, and then obviously having some new cards in there as well, like the Clamilton guy. So I guess they did have a bit of preamble, and Unsanctioned kind of flew under the radar. So I think this obviously feels a bit more thought through, and obviously a little bit more deep. It's got more depth to it. There's a lot going on.
It feels a little bit more like, because it's just classic Magic, right? But it's just the format in which you play it, and it's very similar. Other Magic products that kind of play out a little bit similar to this are things like Battle Bond and Conspiracy, where they take like a draft format or a limited format and kind of shake up how it's played to make it its own thing. And we are going to talk about a little bit about gameplay today, because there is, like in the past we've said about things like Battle Bond, like the flavour is actually in playing and drafting in a certain way, and there is a certain like feel that you get from doing that. Like I know you and I absolutely love Battle Bond. We've never really done Conspiracy before, but I know fans of Conspiracy.
I'd really want to do Conspiracy 3. Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, like Conspiracy players really love Conspiracy. Like you hear, for example, Josh and Jimmy from the Command Zone. They're not talking about Commander. They're talking about Conspiracy almost like specifically as its own kind of format. So like we'll talk about that a little bit later. But before that, we're kind of burned out on doing full set reviews. This isn't a full set review.
Yeah, like I think everyone everywhere is so burnt out. Not only the audiences, but like the content producers. Like everyone that I've seen that do them are like, right, so we're back for our 4th week of reviews.
Yeah.
So many cards to be inundated with. So yeah, we're not going to go into it like super crazy depth.
No, and we had a bit of a grump last week as well. At least I had a bit of a grump last week about certain flavour things in M21, alongside some of the brilliant things in M21. I don't want people to get the wrong idea. I do like that core set. I think it's one of the best core sets we've ever had. It's just some of the lows were pretty low. So we're not going to do any of that this week because I don't have the energy and you don't have the energy. So we're just going to do favourites. Favourite legendaries, favourite flavour cards,
all
things
highs.
we like. All highs today because life's too short and I've got other things I need to do today. So let's just jump into it. So legendaries. There are new legendaries for this set, which is brilliant. Like, and they're really cool and they're really flavorful as well.
Yeah, they're all very weird. None of them are like generic, cool, like normal people like things. They're all something interesting.
Really they're all slightly subversive, right? And there's been a bit of support been given to, because obviously the whole thing about this is about themes and tribes and magic. This is what the packs are based off of. So some of them are classic, like we mentioned goblins, but there are a few that give support to tribes in magic which haven't really had a lot of support before. So one of them, we've got a Minotaur legendary, for example, who supports Minotaurs in a way that hasn't been happened before. And not only is this a support in maybe like a tribal deck in, say, something like Limited or Constructed, Minotaur Tribal ever makes its way into Modern, I doubt it. But also things for like Commander, like you can't get around it. These products are also good for Commander as well. So if you're building like Minotaur Tribal, the only other option you really had was Neheb, the Glorified, the first one, the Rakdos one.
Neheb the Worthy.
The Worthy, thank you, the non-zombie one.
Yeah.
Or Mogis, God of Slaughter, but now you have this Sirloin one, which is pretty cool. He's not actually on our list of favourite legendaries, but there's like that. That's just
he is now. I put him at the bottom.
There we go. Sethron. Sorry, yes,
Yeah.
Sethron,
Yeah.
Hurloon General. So you'll talk about him in just a minute. But first, let's just run down the list. So I've got the first half, and you've got the second half of favourites. So my first favourite is Kel's Fight Fixer, which is in the Minions themed deck. And Kel's Fight Fixer is a 2 black for a legendary creature, Azra Warlock. So an Azra, which is a race that we've only seen in the context of Battle Bond, and there were a couple in Modern Horizons as well, which we had an Azra Ninja, I think, in Modern Horizons, but mostly we've seen on Battle Bond. And it's got Menace. Whenever you sacrifice a creature, you may pay Hybrid Dimir. If you do, draw a card, and then you can pay 1 generic and sacrifice a creature to have Kel's Fight Fixer gain indestructible until end of turn. It's a 4/3. So this is, not only is this a fight commander in Dimir colours, this is also like an aristocrats commander in Dimir colours as well, which is super interesting. And also it's the first blue Azra that we've had. So the card is black, so you could play it in limited just mono black, but it does have blue in its colour identity for something like commander. And up until now, we've only seen Azra in black and red. In fact, with Kells, there are only 8 Azra cards in all of Magic. And the only other legendary was Vertus the Veiled, which was the partner commander, who was in mono black. So, yeah, there's a lot going on. The art is by Magali Villeneuve as well, who's one of our favourites on the show.
So it's very pretty, obviously.
Oh, yeah, very pretty. And it kind of, there's a lot about it which kind of expands on Azra lore, because we don't really know much about them. So the Azra are purple-skinned, almost like a cross between demons and humans.
They're like tieflings. If you know D&D, they're very much like the tieflings, but without tails.
Yeah, exactly. So we don't really know much about them, and I can imagine the reason that we don't know much about them is because they might take up the same space as demons and devils.
Yeah, well, they run by bargaining. It says in that they like trade, because they tend to flock towards like money and power, that kind of thing, which obviously fits Kel's flavour amazingly. So obviously being like Kylem's obviously all about it will be basically like a trade hub. I mean, the thing is, we don't know much about Kylem whatsoever. So being able to, and they are not domesticated too. What's the word I'm looking for? What's the word when they're from, when someone's from somewhere?
Indigenous.
Thank you. Indigenous to Kylem. So we're not going to see them very much unless we do another Battle Bond. So, but yeah, like their lore is, as you can see, very, very narrow, and they do fit that kind of like demony look. But I feel like we're now moving away from like demons that are they're either really animalistic, whereas these are now the demons that are a bit more humanistic, and you can converse with and talk to and have a bit more, loquation.
Sure. So. Yeah. I think there's definitely something to be dug a little bit deeper into there, and I kind of hope that, because I mean, we'll only ever go to Kylem in the terms of a Battle Bond set, but I kind of also hope we see Azra on other planes as well. I mean, maybe they're a little bit like the core, or the
Rakshasa or something like that.
Where they are just going to be on one plane.
Yeah,
which is a shame.
Yeah,
because I really like the look of
though. This idea of where she benefits off of things dying because she knows which way the odds are going to go, and she'll throw any fighter down to save herself as well. With that bit at the beginning of Daredevil where he's supposed to throw the fight and he obviously doesn't. I like trying to find links wherever I can into modern life. But yeah, it's really cool to have this aristocrats theme, and I think the main thing that people have been saying about her is that, well, she's not as good as Korvold, and I think that's probably the best thing about.
Oh my god. Do you know, I've seen that take a couple of times where it's exactly like, you're right, where people have gone, isn't this just a less good Korvold? And that idea in Commander, at least, of someone going, isn't it just a less good version of this card? Fuck off. Like, you don't know what that person's building that deck for. Like, that does annoy me, because in terms of power, well, it's just different because it's not in Jund colours. So you have an access to blue, which Korvold doesn't have, so it's got on a completely different access. And B, that person might be building it because they really fucking love Azras, or they like deals, or whatever else, in which case Korvold is not a good commander. So yeah, if that's your take,
this is a theme deck. Whereas with Korvold, as much as he's a king that was cursed to be a dragon, there's not much flavour to unpack beyond eat yum yum yum. I'm like Prosh, In terms
of his playability, to play him out, he's not the most flavourful card, which is a shame because, as you say, his story is actually pretty cool. But you're right.
With the other way around, we haven't got really much about this last, but I mean, we know that you can build a really cool thematic rogue kind of inspired deck, which I think is the whole point of these products is to highlight a certain theme, and I think this duplicity aspect of Dimir that we get to see. I think a lot of people like it. I think Dimir is one of the more popular guilds in Ravnica. So yeah, it's nice to see it in another place, and also yeah, it's just a random slice of like a bit of Azra is quite nice to see.
Absolutely. Okay, moving on. My next pick for flavour is Ineaz, the Gale Force, which is a 3 blue legendary creature, Djinn. I love a Djinn. Flying, and then you can pay 2 generic and an Azorius hybrid. Attacking creatures with flying get +1/+1 till end of turn. And then the second ability has whenever 3 or more creatures you control with flying attack, each player gains control of a non-land permanent of your choice controlled by the player to their right. So there's stuff going on.
I think to quote Jimmy Wong, this might be the most interesting Azorius commander ever printed.
Sure. So it's got. I mean, we've seen similar things to this on cards like Amanatu, the Fate Shifter Planeswalker, right, where you move permanents around in a certain direction.
Yeah. But you never normally do that with her. Like, obviously you used to have to jump through some loopholes for Ineaz as well. But like realistically, you're probably not going to do her as an Amanatu player. How many times did you use her ultimate?
Well, no, I didn't. I used to have an Amanatu deck, and I don't think I used it a single time.
Yeah, whereas this is a little bit more possible and a little bit more.
I will say that it's not necessarily my reason for this being a flavor pick isn't necessarily the kind of absurd playability of this card, because I kind of think actually it's going to be a little bit mean when this kind of thing happens, unless the attitude you have going into the game is that you're very open and you go, I'm playing an Ineaz deck. We're all going to be using each other's permanents. I'm not necessarily going to screw everyone over, but also I'm just going to do some hijinks, like as opposed to just keep going like, well, I'm going to take all your good stuff.
As with all blue-white cards, you don't have to be a dickhead about it. You can do it politically. You can do the whole like, oh, okay, what's the best thing for the table? Well, that's the person's in front. We'll make sure they don't have that thing anymore. This person's behind. Okay, we'll make sure they get something. You could be that kind of group huggy kind of player with it, but that tends to invoke as much anger as Stacks does, weirdly enough. So I don't know. If you're going to try and sit somewhere between Azurius Stacks and Azurius group hug, you might get bitch slapped a lot.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I picked this as my flavor pick primarily is because I actually really like Djinn in Magic, the kind of the genie trope, right? They use the word Djinn because it's a bit more catch-all, and there have been a couple of legendary Djinns in the past, and they've always been quite interesting, especially with things like their flavor. But there's a card called which actually came in the Amanatu deck, Djinn of Wishes, which is where it was the 3 wish trope, so you could take a wish counter off of it and go and choose something up, which I like the idea. If say Sphinxes are always considered to be kind of in their play style, the way that Sphinxes are usually designed, in some kind of weird card draw thing. Like you have like Azor, or you have Sphinx of Athun as like a fact or fiction thing, or
you've also got Artemsis. You've also got Six of the Chime.
Yeah.
They're all I was going to talk about with almost, but yeah.
Like they're all a little bit swervy, right, in what they do, and I think Djinn are also quite good for filling that space. But I kind of feel like Djinn could almost not be like the tutoring version of what those creatures do, but I like the space that Djinn occupy, right? I like the fact that you can have these kind of really weird abilities. I also like the fact that they're not printed to death. Like if you did Djinn tribal, I think that'd be a bit of a mistake. It's the same way that
you keep saying this, and now I want to make a gin and tonic deck where it's all islands and gins, and I'm like, every time you say it,
that'd be good,
right?
That would be good. But like Sphinxes are not as printed as many other creature types. Like some sets have more than others, and there are some common Sphinxes.
Well, we've even got a couple more in Jumpstart. Like I noticed that specifically of where they are kind of not inundating. The same with Hydras. If they didn't have very many for a long time, and then suddenly, oh my god, how many Hydras do we have? But I'm not sick of them because they keep doing kind of cool things. So
but I just like it. It's the same thing. I mean, Avatars is maybe a better sort of comparison to a Djinn. Like the creature type Avatar is usually something quite powerful. It's usually something quite beefy with like a very much near to I win effect, right? And I just kind of think Djinn, that as you play them, you might only play one in a deck, especially if it's like a theme deck or a commander deck. But whenever you slap it down, you know things are about to get like a little bit bonkers on the table. And I think Ineaz is another step towards having that. I wouldn't be upset, for example, if they said like every 2 or 3 sets, you knew there was going to be a Djinn on that plane, and it was going to be some bonkers thing like, everyone swaps their life totals, or all creatures reverse their power toughness, or something, a bit weird.
Yeah, they kind of fit in the same kind of they're like blue demons, aren't they? Of where you have this really powerful being kind of bound to you, but obviously they've got a capricious nature. And I guess what you want more, you want more of these Inyazes rather than the Zahids or the Tempest Djinns, where it's just like,
Zahid, Djinn of the Lamp, or whatever it was a little bit boring, which is why I cited Djinn of Wishes as being a bit more swervy.
I mean, that's the two directions they could go, I guess. So I mean, it's nice to see them do this side where it's them kind of messing with you, monkey's paw kind of thing, as you say, rather than just being, hi, I'm a flyer.
Yeah, exactly. The artist for this is Livia Prima. Very cool artwork as well. So you should check it out. My next one down the list is Muxus, Goblin Grandee. Muxus, my god. So we've got a lot of Goblin legendaries, right? That's not breaking any kind of barriers. That's not kind of being innovative. But it's just, everything about this Goblin is just so much fun. And they've been having a lot of fun with Goblins in this M21 Jumpstart realm. So he's 4 red, for a Goblin Noble, legendary creature, 4/4. When Muxus, Goblin Grandee, enters the battlefield, reveal the top 6 cards of your library, put all Goblin creature cards with converted mana cost 5 or less from among them onto the battlefield, and the rest to the bottom of your library in a random order. Whenever Muxus attacks, it gets +1/+1 till end of turn for each other Goblin you control. Wowzers.
Yeah,
so he's a 6-drop. He's a 6-drop, which might not make him like the most efficient Goblin commander for EDH, but I think he's definitely a sort of different. He's a good alternative to Krenko.
He's the closest I've come to being like, oh, is Krenko being toppled? Like, this is really close. The reason why this is close is because it automatically fills the board, with stuff, and it's from your command zone. And the card advantage aspect was always the biggest issue with Krenko. In Krenko, I can win games on turn 3, turn 4, sometimes, and it's not hard to make 120 damage with goblins, but. Getting the difference between 4 and 6 mana in a deck that I already struggle with mana on, that's the issue. But if you do get to 6 mana, you're guaranteeing so much card advantage with this card. I think it is. You can also build it very obnoxiously. You can build combos with Goblin Recruiter, and you can do nonsense with Skirt Prospector and Kiki Jiki and all that nonsense. So, if anything, as much as this does look more expensive, it's probably the more combo-oriented version of the deck than Krenko. So, I guess it kind of depends on which direction you want to go on. You can also just play him fair. You can just play him fairly. But bloody hell, yeah. There aren't many goblins that are more than 5 mana as well, so that might as well just say all goblins. For all intents and purposes. But I guess it was to stop him getting more versions of himself, and I guess you're not even playing this in standard. Yeah, I don't know why I didn't just say all goblins, but
I don't know. But I think it's definitely cool. And the flavour for this guy is really special. So, I mean, most goblins have pretty cool flavour, but this one is primo. So I've got his little lore slide up now. And it says, all goblins know Muxus, the most incredible and influential goblin of them all. What most goblins don't know is that Muxus is actually a set of quintuplets. Each day they roll a die to see who will wear the crown and ride the litter, and who will carry it. On a 6, they take a day off. It's not one character. It's
amazing.
Quintuplets. And you can see in the artwork, it's one of these quintuplets on top of their chair being carried by the rest of them. It's just the most goblin thing I think I've ever heard.
Yeah. And the goblin and the roll of the dice as well aspect, kind of, that's very goblin-y as well.
Yeah,
really good. Because I think Goblin Game is a roll of die of 6 one, isn't it?
No. Well, Goblin Game is where you have to hide objects, or you pick a number.
Another one. There's a one where you roll a 1 to 6 and it has a random effect. One of them's destroy all lands. One of them's everyone wheels. One of them's.
I don't know.
Yeah, I can't remember. It's a really cool, weird one though. I think it's Goblin Wheel of Goblin or something. I don't know, whatever.
Wheel that goblin.
Yeah, whatever.
Cool. I mean, those are my 3, but I know you've put 4 down, and a couple of them were ones that I was going to do as well if I had more slots. So I think we're on the same wavelength with a few of these. Again, guys, we're not talking about all of them. No. If someone doesn't hear their favorite legendary be read out, we're sorry. We just don't agree. But no, they're all pretty good, right? But we've only got there's only so many hours in a day. I'm going to
skip through a couple anyway, because the thing that I wanted to talk about was more the idea that they're this highlighting of themes and giving certain play styles a much better general or much better commander than we've seen before. Bruvak, the Grandiloquent, yes. Grandiloquent, is the mill one. So basically, any time that you would mill a card, you mill 2 cards instead. This works for X effects as well. So if they would mill X cards, it will be twice X. It also works for things like mill half of your library. It would mill your entire library. He's an advisor, so this is basically handpicked, deliberately selected from bottom to top, built for persistent petitioners. But I like the fact that we have got a dedicated mill commander. Beyond that, what I want to point out is if you look in the image of him, look at his picture. As much as he's got the spyglass, and you're expecting that scroll to have like loads of writing on it, the font on those runes is about 36. So that massive scroll is actually probably only got about 6 words on it. I'm sorry, I throw poo at the artistic direction of that one.
Well, do you think maybe it was just readability for us as the viewer of that picture to look? There's writing on that scroll.
I think we noticed there's writing on it. He's probably not staring at something that's blank.
Flavour text is called Bruvac. It's and another thing.
Yeah,
so it's this idea that he just keeps going.
Also, using words like grandiloquent, which sound made up but aren't, is fantastic. This is one of the reasons why I have such a vast vernacular, is because I've been looking at magic flavour texts and magic names for years, and magic is one of the best sources for crazy words that you didn't know were words. So yeah, grandiloquent is actually a word. And it's about the velocity of your language, obviously. Anyway, so in the same kind of theme of like giving tribes and themes commanders that we haven't seen before, Zerzoth the Chaos Rider is the devil tribal. It's a devil tribal. A devil legendary, which allows him to be like the first. So head in the same way with unicorns, because there's a unicorn commander as well that we're not going to talk about. There might be limited options for you, but now there is an option for you to play. Saying that, he is maybe one of the more interesting mono red commanders we've seen in a while. 2 and a red for a 2/3 legendary creature devil. Whenever an opponent draws their first card each turn, if it's not their turn, you create a 1/1 red devil creature token with when this creature dies, deals 1 damage to any target. When one or more devils you control attack 1 or more players, you and those players each draw a card, then discard a card at random. Now, there's a lot to unpack here from this little devil. He reminds me a lot of Simprodder. Simprodder, a nice card that allowed you at the beginning of your turn to reveal the top cards, and your opponent can take damage or have you keep it. This Punisher effect kind of thing. This isn't a Punisher effect. This is a guy who's just going to do you in anyway. I love this idea of where you can play wheel effects, get loads of devils on your turn, attack into them, make them draw and discard their cards. I mean, I play a lot of decks like Nakusa and stuff like that. I like people drawing and discarding cards quite a lot. So the fact you can do a discard strategy for it, a ping strategy for it, it gives you tokens to sacrifice for effects as well. Like, this is amazing diversity for a card that when you hear Devil Tribal, you just think, well, Devil's going to get +2/+0 and have haste or something like that.
Yeah.
No, not even slightly. Yeah, it does have the Devil word on there, but if anything, it's self-sufficient as well. It does provide its own value, so it doesn't even require you to have a board or something. Like, this is the kind of clever direction I think they should go with tribes, of where they go, take a tribe that's not very loved and give it something really interesting to do.
But this is what I mean. A lot of devils do this pingy thing anyway. That's kind of what they're good at, right? So it's leaning into its own thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's quite. But it does it in a way that isn't just making it so whenever like a devil you control dies or something, it's not deepening the abilities it already has. It's kind of expanding the way that you can use them, which I think is a more important thing to do with tribes.
He looks pretty rad as well. Like, the artwork's pretty good.
Hellboy alters all day. It's a fantastic looking card.
The artist is Dmitry Burmak for Zerzoth.
He's had a few. He's had a few really cool cards. I do like Dmitry. The next one I was going to talk about quickly. We did talk about for a second was Sethron, Hurling General. Again, a Minotaur general that's or a Minotaur legend that's doing something to help the tribe rather than boosting its power and toughness or whatever like Naheb does. He is a 4/4 for 3 red legendary creature, human Minotaur warrior, not human. When Sethron Hurling General or another non-token Minotaur enters the battlefield under your control, create a 2/3 red Minotaur creature token, and then for 2 and a Rakdos hybrid, Minotaurs you control get +1/+0 and gain menace and haste until end of turn. So the opposite of the devil thing, of where it is just basically giving you buffs, but it's also self-sufficient in making more dudes for you. Plus, the interesting thing about this is it really harkens back to the original Minotaur of the Hurling Minotaur, and also it's pale. So this isn't one of the Minotaurs from Theros. This is a Minotaur from Dominaria, and we're seeing, but obviously, kind of, it's nice to see them go with a Minotaur not from Theros, considering we've been there for a little bit, and the only Minotaurs we've really seen for a while have been the typical normal Therosian Minotaurs. It's quite nice to see.
Sure, Sirloon. I keep messing up his name.
Hurling,
Sethron, that's it. Sethron. He's also, as you say, not only is he's got a pale fur coat, but he's also on like a snowy mountainside, which we haven't really seen any snowy areas of Theros, and I don't think we ever will really. We do see something of the Therosian Minotaurs in the lands. We'll talk about the lands in a couple of minutes.
Absolutely.
But their themed land is of Scophos, the labyrinth of Scophos, which is the Minotaur holdout on Theros. So they are paying homage to Minotaurs across the multiverse.
They're giving love to a tribe again. Like there's a guy on Reddit who's called the Minotaur guy, and every set he does a Minotaur review, and obviously he had a field day this set because he's basically they've just made his life basically. The only other one I really want to talk about is Tiny Bones.
Tiny Bones.
Yeah, this might be the outlier as one of the boogeymen of the set in terms of like competitive play and how it feels to play against, because he's basically discard deck. So he's a 1 and a black for a 1/2 legendary creature skeleton rogue, cutest little motherfucker in all the worlds. Artist Un Memento is Jason Rainville. He's done a few artworks.
Yeah.
He's got some really good work coming out at the moment. He is the cutest little guy. It looks like it's basically it's like Nightmare Before Christmas, that kind of sweetness. It's like if Jack Skeleton as a kid. Anyway, I'm going to get too kawaii about this. At the beginning of each end step, if an opponent discarded a card this turn, you draw a card and lose 1 life. 4 black to make each opponent with no cards in their hand lose 10 life. How fun. How fun that sounds. I like this card basically because its big distractions mean tiny nuisances can slip by unnoticed. And I like the fact I feel like they deliberately made him as cute as possible to undermine the fact that he is a very destructive and abusive commander. But it's nice to have a discard commander that doesn't care about making them discard but cares about if they did discard. So again, you're giving and you've got the payoff of the end game of what do you do when you've run out of cards and they've run out of cards, like, and all of your effects don't trigger anymore. Well, now if you have no cards in hand, you're losing 10 life. So it's a kind of a way to almost like put a bow on a theme and a style of play that's already kind of existing.
Cool. All right. Favorite flavor cards. I'm going to kick it off. So my first flavor card, I wrote it on the outline as Archaeomancer. It's not Archaeomancer. It's Archaeomender, which is 2 generic and a blue for a human wizard, 2/3, and it says whenever Archaeomender enters the battlefield, return target artifact card from your graveyard to your hand. So it's Eternal Witness, but just for artifacts. And the reason this is on my flavor,
Archaeomancer, but for artifacts.
Ah, well, there you go. Yes, of course. There we go. The reason it's on my flavor picks is because it's actually a really nice blending of everything, really. The name, the art, and the flavor text, and obviously the ability. So on the flavor text, it says, just as a broken relic can be mended, a shattered history can be made whole. And the artwork depicts a wizard mending a broken vase with a method which in the real world on Earth we know as kintsugi, which is a Japanese method for repairing broken pottery using powdered gold or silver.
Yeah. It highlights the brokenness of it, doesn't it?
Yeah. Like the whole philosophy of kintsugi is that it treats breakage and repair as part of the history of the object, right? Yeah. So it's not something that you need to hide away with special techniques.
Celebrate it, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And it gives it a beauty all of its own. So, I mean, right there, like the term history is often associated with kintsugi. And history is right there in the flavor text of this card. So already that's a win. Archaeomender, the idea that it's not like a necromancer, right? Or it's not like just pulling something out of the ether. It's taking a broken thing and mending it. It seems just a bit more visceral and sort of physical. And the artwork is, by Miranda Meeks is just beautiful. Like just the kintsugi gold on the vase is really nice.
Yeah, the pink wash behind it is really
like that's the kind of magic. Yeah, it's just everything about it. It's just super super wonderful. I'm going to take a punt and say that this is a character that is on Kamigawa, if only because of the kind of Japanese references. But there's nothing
I can imagine an area for the whole like history, artifact, synergy kind of thing, and the fact that Dominica is so diverse that maybe it could have, it's hard to tell otherwise.
I mean, I'd say it's really just because of the Japanese influences that I'm going to say Kamigawa. And if it is Kamigawa, that's kind of nice because, as we've said before, these kinds of sets, which might be difficult to come back to as like a mainline thing, it'd be nice to see in these ancillary products, just kind of dipping your toe in. But yeah, Archaeomender.
It's also interesting from a technical, mechanical point of view that Archaeomancer's 2 blue for a 1/2 that gets you back an instant or sorcery. This is 2 and a blue for a 2/3 that gets you back an artifact, which almost shows you kind of how Wizards compares the power level of artifacts compared to instants and sorceries. Just an interesting thing. So I was looking like, how is it cheaper and bigger? I was like, because artifacts are really broken. I was like, oh, actually, no, instants and sorceries are way worse. Never mind.
Well, also, it only grabs back an artifact.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I guess it gives you Archaeomancer gives you options, but yeah, this is cool. It's a very cool card. Very nice.
My next one is Witch of the Moors. Now, this is a bit of a mystery. So the card itself is 3 generic black for a human warlock. It has Death Touch. At the beginning of your end step, if you gain life this turn, each opponent sacrifices a creature, and you return up to 1 target creature from your graveyard to your hand. So a bit of an Aristocrats theme. I don't know if this is going in my Aristocrats Queen Marchesa
deck. It's going in my Ailey. Oh, fuck yeah, it's going in Ailey.
The 5 slot is really contested, but there we go. For 4/4, and the artwork is by Caio Monteiro. Every time I say your name, Monteiro, I butcher it, so I do apologise. But the mystery here is, where is this warlock from? Because the artwork depicted shows a hooded figure with multiple arms, carrying a lantern, carrying a walking stick, carrying some kind of bladed implement, and holding out a red apple. Okay, one of the other hands is doing a bit of a magic-y thing. So this is multiple armed, hooded warlock figure holding out a red apple. We've seen this motif before in Tempting Witch from Eldraine. Again, a human warlock, again with multiple arms, holding out a red apple, wearing a hood and a walking stick. Now, the difference here is... Oh, and they both have bells as well. I've just noticed in both their artworks. They are both adorned with bells around their heads and hoods as well. Now, the difference here is that on Witch of the Moors, all the arms seem to be adult arms, or rather elderly arms. Like, this is decrepit, but they're all the same size, they're all the same kind of thing, and their skin is kind of greying. But on Tempted Witch, it seems to be that it's just a normal old woman, but there are infant arms coming from her chest as opposed to all around their body. But I just can't get away from the fact they both are wearing the
parallels,
same outfit,
right? The parallels of
the really... red apple, the multiple arms, and I just want to know where this Witch of the Moors is from, because my instant thing with seeing these two cards and the fact that they are almost identical, really, on paper, even though the art style is slightly different and the actual composition of the piece is different, but on paper, what's in the picture is identical. Is that this is from Eldraine. Witch of the Moors is from Eldraine, but the way that they've executed the multiple arms is so different. And maybe my idea is that Tempting Witch is almost like a newly witchified witch, like they've only just kind of started their transformation, and then you see Witch of the Moors, and that's them at like the end of their kind of cycle, and they are fully witchified, and this is what witches generally look like on Eldraine.
Well, I think that absolutely. I think that this is, had it not been for the apple thing, because I was looking, I'm like, is it part of her? Have you necromantically like stitched them to yourself? Because I was thinking it kind of reminds me a little bit of like the kind of the witches and stuff you could have in the Caliga and in Dominaria. And the more I think about it, the more I'm like, yeah, maybe this is just a development of that individual character. Does the one from Eldraine have any flavor text?
The one from Eldraine says, so Tempting Witch, murder clad in crimson beauty, and end of life and love and duty, Barrow Witch incantation, and then Witch of the Moors has many hands for many evils. So there's not any signifiers there.
I was going to look at if there was a connection, between, but no.
But it's just, I mean, if it wasn't for the apple was the big thing, and then if it wasn't for me literally just seeing the bells on their outfits as well.
Why would you put an apple on there if you weren't? I mean, unless you're, again, just doing the hint to Snow White, to the evil queen. But that trope if you've literally done it in the last year. So I can't imagine. Yeah, maybe it's worth asking.
Maybe it's the same character, or maybe this is what witches look like. The only thing I would say against
they've always got apples because they're arseholes, so they just always got.
Well, maybe that's just what they do. The only thing I would say against it, for it maybe being what all witches are like on Eldraine, is that we do know from the novel, The Wilded Quest, is that the King Kenrith, is seduced by a witch. So unless he's super freaky for multiple arms, or obviously magic.
Well, they don't all have to. Maybe they don't all have the same kind of, because maybe they get all warped by their individual witchiness. You know, because I guess the witch for the one from Eldraine, like, you know, it's more about greed and everything, stealing children away, and obviously now she can't hide the arms. It's almost like the arms have gone, no, now this is who you are. You know, she can't be all sneaky about it anymore. So
yeah,
I don't know.
So, yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, very cool. And the whole point is it creates discussion, like, where are you from? What's the context? And obviously we didn't necessarily get any, so it keeps the door open rather than closing it in a way that we don't want it to be closed.
But then if it is from Eldraine,
Mm.
I quite like that as well. I like the fact that they're building on the world of Eldraine.
Yeah, no,
even after they've had
exactly.
all that.
Yeah, they leave the option kind of. They'll say they don't give a finality of it. So yeah, I hope it is though. I hope they do because we like seeing this. We like seeing characters and multiple cards from multiple sets for no reason. It's quite nice.
My last flavor card, I'll be very quick on this one because it's not a hugely deep thing, but it's actually Lightning Core Excavator, which is a 1-drop colorless artifact golem, 0/3. And the flavor text is, that's the third time this month it's exploded on site. Maybe we should switch to something a little less defective, Karen, archaeologist. And the art depiction by Christy Balinescu is a golem with a very sort of classic domed head and big bug eyes.
Yeah, it's very
and a giant. Yeah. Very like a giant sort of Iron Man chess piece, and it's exploding. And I just like golems. I like golems and automatons in Magic. If the Weatherlight Saga hadn't existed and there wasn't that kind of sort of sci-fi punk fantasy aspect of it, I'd be more on board with them having golems being like the kind of sci-fi thing or like the mechanical thing that kind of goes across the multiverse. That was one of my big things about Kaladesh I really liked, was all the automatons. So I think it sits on the right side of fantasy and sci-fi.
Yeah, it's like Laputa Castle in the Sky. It still feels fantasy rather than sci-fi, you know?
Yeah. It's kind of on that steampunk edge of
I guess
things.
if it's being powered by magic, then it isn't science fiction. It is fantasy at that
point.
It's
still fantasy, right? Yeah. And I just like golems. What are your flavor picks?
So I have Goblin Law. It's got its reprint. It's been reprinted for the first time in years. It's got a new Kev Walker artwork. The thing I like about this is it talks about other goblins within the flavor text. So it talks about the Goblin King, the original Goblin King. It talks about Tuk Tuk. And then the best thing about this card in its flavor text, let me just quickly read it for you. It says, the coronation of King Numsgill. No. The adventures of Tuk Tuk. No. The saga of Morpo the Butt. No, where's my story? The best way about that is we don't know who Morpo the Bard is. So you can damn well bet we've already had about 17 different custom Magic cards about this guy. Why would they mention 2 people that have been mentioned? And then mention someone that hasn't been mentioned yet. Tinfoil hat, we see it in the Commander Legends set. That's what I'm thinking.
Cool. That's interesting.
Really cool. But the fact that they threw back and they gave us a new artwork for it was really cool. When they haven't done it for many of the other cards. I think it's one of 2 cards that actually gets new artwork. I'm not sure.
The Goblin Lore podcast, which is a Magic podcast that deals with how the game relates to real world things like mental health, and they're also associated with Hipsters of the Coast. Obviously, went nuts for this card because it's the name of their podcast. So yeah, very very cool.
Yeah, very nice throwback as well. It was a desperate need for imprint as well, just in time for Hollow One's grandiose leaving of the meta game. The next one is Ornos, and this is the only reason I want to talk about this is one of the new Sphinx legendaries. The reason I want to talk about this is because not anything other than the fact that it has an ability that you have to discard 2 cards of different names to draw 3 cards. The reason I like this is, as you were saying earlier about Sphinx flavor, I noticed this across various different cards. Obviously, Artemsis wants you to reveal cards with different converted mana costs. Sphinx of the Chimes requires you to discard 2 cards of the same name to draw 4 cards. Things like that. The reason I like this is because I like this idea of the Sphinx's flavor as much as we do have the fact or fiction style of it. I like the fact that you kind of have to almost like play a riddle. You have to play a little game to get things out of it. You have to meet certain requirements. That feels very much like a Sphinx thing to do, of where they've offered you something, but you need to meet a very specific requirement, which is as close I think you can get to asking a riddle beyond Sphinx Ambassador, where you literally go and get a card and make them guess what you got from them.
Sphinxes are really good at that. There's a Sphinx card I used to run in my Atris Commander deck, which is where you had to pick a card in your hand, and a player had to guess whether it was higher or lower than 4 converted mana cost. And if they guessed wrong, you could put that card onto the battlefield. Things like that, it's very, very cool. For
do you want to play a game? Like, I love that idea.
And so do I.
It's not aggressive either. It's always nice. It feels very Sphinxy, and that's one thing I liked about it. Beyond the fact that she also does something else cool. The reason I want to talk about it is I do like this idea of where you can kind of create a suite of different abilities that all kind of play in the same space that give Sphinx this kind of mysterious feel. The only other card I wanted to talk about was Allosaurus Shepherd. Now, this is a 1/1 for a green. It can't be countered. It makes your green spells uncounterable, and then for 4 green, all elf creatures you control get base power and toughness 5/5 and become dinosaurs in addition to their other types. The reason I love this is a throwback to the Allosaurus Rider from Cold Snap. It's a really cool card. Very strange elf because it's an elf dinosaur. It's very strange to be like, oh, you're just casual elf, just riding a dinosaur. Why not? But yeah, like as much as this is going straight into my Marion deck, I like the fact that it's a throwback. I also looked at it because I'm like, does it need to have all of the extra abilities and all of the bits of ways to push it and everything? But I also just like the fact you just get a band of elves and then suddenly it's like, they will just jump on their dinosaurs and come charging over the battlefield at you. Very nice. Really cool flavor. Yeah, nice throwback. And that's what I like about it. So there have been some weird, they've gone into areas we haven't seen before, and they've also done throwbacks to things that I would never have expected them to do, which is obviously something they can do with sets like this. So it's nice to have taken full advantage of it.
And this is exactly the kind of set you want them to be doing this in, because it's a set that has been clearly designed for. It's been designed as a palate cleanser for players that maybe are getting a little bit tired of their very sort of rigid or hyper competitive formats. And B, it's been designed for newer players just to be able to grab 2 booster packs, smush them together, and go. Right, because there is no deck building. Even the lands are included in these booster packs. So the fact that they've included new lore to get kind of people on board who are enfranchised, and the fact that they've given people who are new to the game like a big depth of lore and depth of flavor in a similar way that the core sets have been doing recently as well. So this is essentially like core set the unset, right? Is I think how we said it beforehand.
Yeah.
It's really good, and they've done a fantastic job.
Do you like goblins? Well, here's literally goblin lore.
Yeah,
very good, very cool.
Let's move on to the lands, because I think for a lot of players, especially those that are kind of visually minded for their kind of pimping out of decks, the lands are fucking incredible in this set.
Absolutely.
So each of the themes has lands inside of each booster pack, like we just said, and they have regular artworks. I say regular artworks. I think they have artworks that have kind of been throughout Magic's history. But one land per pack is going to be a special art land that is specifically themed to the pack of that theme. So there's a goblin land, there's a sphinx land, there's a mill land, so on, so on, so on. And the artwork for almost every single one of them is phenomenal. We're going to talk through our favorite ones and the ones that maybe have made the kind of biggest splashes. But if you go onto the Jumpstart wiki, the Gamepedia, they have a section where they have all of the individual unique lands, and I really suggest you take like 10 minutes out of your day and just kind of go through them, because it is just, I mean, lands are generally a space where artists can kind of be a little bit bigger anyway, but these ones are just bonkers, and they do things as well which we haven't seen in lands yet, because again this has kind of an unset feel, which we'll talk about.
Surprisingly large amount of innovation.
Yeah,
and I feel like all it does is kind of highlight how boring our lands have been before, and that's something saying of anything, because I think lands, as you say, are some of the best pieces of work, because they do give you a landscape. But yeah, some of the directions they've taken, and I'm like, why haven't we been seeing this before? I didn't know you could do this with basics.
Well, yeah. So I think one of the things we're going to discover is that a lot of the lands are taking liberties with what can be considered like a land mass. So some of them are quite abstract, and when they've tried to do this before in Magic, so it's the classic mountain thing, right? So when Ravnica set came out, the original Ravnica and the set since, most mountains have been like skylines or like massive
spires.
Buildings, spires, things like that. And there is a non-zero amount of players who are Vorthos minded that really don't like that they kind of see it as being not a cheat, but also not really a true representation.
Yeah, it's fair that you can get red mana out of it, but is it a mountain?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I think that's why they've not really done it before, because not that they don't want to piss people off, because when's that really stopped anyone doing anything? But I think there has been this idea that, it has to be almost like a land structure. But they've kind of thrown that out the window with this set. The first thing that we're going to talk about is the big one. It's the one everyone's talking about, and it is Titus Luntner's Phyrexian Swamp. So the Phyrexian Swamp, first thing you notice about it does not have a human language on it. It has the Phyrexian script, which we have previously seen on Judge promo versions of Elish Norn. So they've used it for this. We know what it says, because it just says swamp and basic land swamp, right? So it's not like it's a mystery as to what it reads as. And actually that's kind of cool, because we can use it as like a key. But yeah, very, very sweet. So that's immediately is just brilliant. The artwork itself is super interesting. So the artwork itself shows a Phyrexian obliterator, and it's very clearly an obliterator as well, stood in front of a decayed structure. And many eagle-eyed people, I actually first saw this from the Commander Sphere podcast, so shout out from them, is a Vault of Whispers, which is the artifact land from Mirrodin. So it's the Vault of Whispers, but it's since been destroyed, and it's now like a stump version of itself. And the landscape around it is much more arid, even for a Phyrexian landscape. It's incredibly arid, and the Phyrexian obliterator just looks kind of lost on this little island with the ruined Vault of Whispers. I did ask Titus Lintner on Twitter about this, and I asked him what the art direction was, and he said the art direction asked for a Phyrexian creature in an endless sea of black oil. And then I said to him, well, that's not what this shows. And he said, no, I presented a Vault of Whispers and a Phyrexian Obliterator because it's his favourite card in terms of the Obliterator with one of his favourite locations, the Vault of Whispers. So he presented the original sketches to them for this, and they went, the art directors went, oh, actually, that's a really fucking cool idea. So this is a really classic example of where artists, when given rope by a good AD, can turn something which would have been good into something great.
Yeah, give them enough time to spread your wings. Yeah, the pose of the Phyrexian obliterators harkens back to Phyrexian Totem. As well. It's almost the exact same type. So it's linking 3 different cards together on a basic land. Very, very cool. As you say, like the fact they've got the text on there as well has made the people that are out there trying to translate Phyrexian a little bit more happy. Turns out it's really difficult. If you ever watch The Arrival, you understand certain keys and way that people speak is very different. So I'm not sure if you can just directly translate it through a lexicon, but it's really cool. It was really great to see this text. I hope that I'm not sure I really hope we see a little bit of it when we go back, because we saw a bit of it on the in the artwork of oh bloody hell, what's the Black Saga?
Phyrexian Scriptures?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Phyrexian Scriptures. And it's written on the altar there. There's a bit more written in there. So yeah, any amount of Phyrexians more is good. It's good.
Yeah.
I really like it.
I'm just going to quickly through a couple more that I liked, because obviously we could probably do a whole episode on these lands. One of them is the Mill Island, the island for the Mill themed deck by Pewter Jura. This is a giant head with a grindstone on top, and it harkens back to the card Millstone. So again, this is the idea of like what constitutes a land. Well, this is a giant statue, and it's because it's in the mill deck, it's a millstone in the land. Very cool. We have the Goblin Mountain by Ralph Horsley. This is another one that people have been going nuts over. So this is where the mountainside itself, when you take a closer look at it, is actually made up of a giant horde of goblins, all very loosely rendered in the artwork, so you can't make out each individual one. You can make out the shapes of this horde of goblins. Very heavy saturated red as well. Very cool mountain that we see there. 2 more that I want to very quickly go through. One of them is the island from the Well Red themed packs, which I don't know what that constitutes as, but Well Red is fine. And this is the real one, which Adam Paquette has done the artwork for this. And this is the one where it really deconstructs what you can do on a land.
Yeah, this is really surrealist,
It is an island because it has a boat and a sea, but the island and all the little rocks off of the island are made up of giant books. So it's this really surrealist, this kind of slightly absurdist painting, which you could imagine like is someone's like fever dream. Like it's the same sort of thing we said for Sublime Epiphany and M21.
Yeah, exactly. It's got the same kind of feel. Yeah, that ethereal kind of mind feel.
Yeah. And the last one I want to talk about is Elena Danner's Forest for the... Which theme is it? Elena Danner...
+1.
Oh, +1. Sorry, yes, there is. So it's the Forest by Elena Danner for +1. And this is... it's very hard to describe. I don't know quite how to describe it. So it's almost like you're looking from the top down on a ring of trees, but the ring of trees are spreading out to the edges of the painting. And in the center, there's a central island where all the roots kind of come together. And you can see through the trees the kind of skyline beyond, but that itself is in like a concentric ring, which, just look it up. It's incredible. I asked her about this on Twitter as well. And she has yet to get back to me with the art direction, but she said that this was a coloured pencil and watercolour with some digital highlights. Coloured pencil, amazing! Like it's just so cool. at the end of the day, it's fantastic. The more and more that she produces, the more and more I just go, yeah, it's fucking amazing. Like, so.
I think out of all of them, the forests are probably the least like diverse. Well, actually, no, the mountains are probably the least diverse because they all have mountains in them. But yeah, like, this one's really cool because they say you get a perspective you don't normally see, that top down look, and it almost got like that locus effect. Yeah, really, really cool, really nice. So I only had a couple because the problem is they are all, apart from maybe one or two that I'm like, okay, that could actually have been in a normal set and you might not have noticed. All of them are unbelievable. The two I wanted to do, Piotr Dura also, as well as the Mill Island, he also did the Angel Plains, and basically he's reimagined the plains as layered feathers, as if you were basically looking at an angel's wing, but it's placed obviously in a way that looks like landscape. Very cool reimagining of seeing a plains, because again, like most of the basics are really really boring in how we normally see them, so it's nice to see them do something different. In the same fashion, Anna Paquette also did the Witchcraft Swamp. You are basically at the water level, at the surface level of a magic potion, so you're basically in a cauldron, but you're set in a perspective that makes it look like you're in a swamp. So there's a big eye on the left-hand side, there's hands and stuff coming out of it, and basically you're from the perspective of if you were sat in the potion as well.
Very cool.
Amazing reimagining of a swamp, really cool. I also really liked the plains that's done by Sung Choi for the Doctor expansion. That's really, really cool. It's got these ley lines that are kind of striding over the landscape. Because I was thinking, like, I was looking through the wiki page that kind of has all of the artworks and everything there, nice and easy to see. And I was looking through, I was like, what's the Doctor one going to be like? I can't remember the Doctor one being even that good. And oh my God, yeah, it's beautiful. I really like this idea of where it's not necessarily about the land, it's about what's happening with the land. It also kind of shows tapping of mana, or better than most basic lands have ever done, better than most lands have ever done. That actually looks like you're tapping the land for white mana and gaining it from the land. So that's really cool. The only other thing I want to talk about, this isn't a new land, it's the fact that Terramorphic Expanse got a new version.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Considering that Evolving Wilds came out years after Terramorphic Expanse only had that one artwork, and it's the first new version, whereas Evolving Wilds has 10. Goddamn 10. And the funny thing is that I think Terramorphic Expanse's original artwork's better than any of the Evolving Wilds artworks.
I agree.
In my opinion.
I agree.
It's really nice to see them do a new one. And I could have sworn I'd seen this artwork somewhere before, but it's not. It's a Converge card from Shards of Alara, a green one. But yeah, it's really, really cool. It's showing the 5 different colours of mana all kind of coming together in the middle. Really cool. Nice to see them do justice to a card like that. And I think it's that and Goblin Lore are the only 2 cards that got reprints. So that's really interesting to see that they're actually going, no, if we're going to do Terramorphic, it's about time. It's about time.
By reprints, you mean like new artworks?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there are loads of other cards in the sets that have like new borders and stuff, but these are the ones that had the first new artworks commissioned for them. So yeah, very good. Very glad to see it get something new.
Cool. Well, the last little thing, because we're running out a little bit of time here, I want to talk about is just the gameplay aspect of it. So I think, as we said before, this is made for newer players to kind of jump on and play something that's kind of wacky and kind of has ties to other games that are out there that are proving quite successful and quite popular. But it also, this kind of thing where they make pre-packaged things and they put them in decks which you don't know necessarily what you're going to get, and you have to pick 2 of them and smush them together, so they're designed to be quite random. For me, and I don't know whether I'm just being biased and skewing this because we're a Flavour podcast, but to me, that actually makes this much more flavourful than at first glance. Because you could sort of think, well, if it's pre-packaged, I can't put anything of myself into the deck build. So if I am someone that builds decks in a flavourful way, this kind of takes that agency away from me. But I actually kind of think it's the opposite. I think if you're able to pick the themes that you have, or even if you're not, the fact that these are all combined with some sort of theme, most of which are based off of flavour and feel of how the cards play out as much as anything else. I don't know, man. I think this is a real sort of service to those players that they come to Magic about how they feel about the game, rather than, having sort of hyper competitive, I have to make the best 60 cards I can, I have to win on turn 3.
It takes the decisions out of your head. It basically goes, instead of you having to break down this set into a way that makes sense, you can digest in a flavour point of view, it goes, no, here is the flavour of it. Experience it. You don't have to build it yourself and worry about getting that card from 16 years ago that no one has any copies of for some reason because it fits your deck perfectly. You don't have to worry about that. You can kind of just lean into it a little bit. And it kind of plays in the same way that one of the things that I love that we do is we play Pack Wars most sets when they come round. And what I love about it is all those crappy cards, that 4 mana destroy a land, is actually really powerful when you're playing against 5 colour nonsense stuff. And it's kind of nice to see all of the cards, like cards you wouldn't necessarily pick because if you had a choice you wouldn't, and you kind of forced to have to play with them and forced to have an appreciation for them, and maybe from there you build a liking of a style that you wouldn't have otherwise chosen. So it kind of takes away that, as the agency, but I think that's a good thing. So it kind of just provides you free kind of decision making. It kind of done it all for you. Yeah, it's very cool.
Okay, so that was really all I wanted to say about the gameplay aspect of it. Obviously, we haven't been able to get our hands on it, and it could turn out that actually the gameplay of it is maybe a little bit stunted. A few people kind of worry that there's not that many lands in each of the packs, like the land count's a little bit low.
I'm also concerned that what if you put the plus one counter one with the mill one? Like there are some that I feel like just don't necessarily blend that well. Like there are some that clearly do, like sacrifice effects reanimation, perfect. Things like that you can get some really explosive combinations, but I do feel like you might still get might be out there some bum combinations of where they don't just quite sync up properly.
Yeah.
But yeah, the only other thing that I will say that this is one big really annoying thing is, when was the last time they printed a card that didn't have a token available for it, Andy? How many years ago?
I mean, are we talking about Orpheomancer?
We are. How many years ago was that, Andy?
I'm gonna say, was in its first printing or when it got reprinted?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the reprint.
5 years ago,
7 years ago. So in that same commander deck, there was Orpheomancer and Sequoia. I have both these cards, so I bought the Prosh deck. That was the last time we didn't have a card, a token made for a card that's released. That's okay, supplemental product, fair enough. Before that was 13 years ago in Time Spiral Block. They have printed a card, Blessed Sanctuary, that creates 2/2 white unicorns, and this product doesn't have any tokens whatsoever in any of the packs, probably because it had that extra slide was taken by the card that tells you what the theme is.
Oh,
exactly,
boo.
right? So there is now a card. They printed a card. This it has not even out yet, and it doesn't have a token. They're still doing this 7 years later, Andy. Your 2/2 unicorns, you're not getting them. Tough titties. Yeah.
Well, what I will say is that if you are looking for tokens and things, this is actually kind of a nice sort of like segue, I suppose, into blinging out your decks in different ways. There are lots of artists that do tokens. RK Post has a website where he does lots of cool tokens. I'm sure he'll be doing some unicorns. And just shop around. A lot of artists, especially on their Patreons and stuff. Like I've signed up for the Johannes Voss Patreon, so I'll be getting some tokens of his as well. And if we don't have tokens in Magic, there are lots of really cool artist tokens that you can get.
Exactly. Well, this is the thing. Yeah, there is also a site and the reason I found this out was because I looked. I managed to find a site that did proxy versions of all the different ones you can't typically get. So it kind of mocked them up as the normal bear token artwork, but added in the ability or whatever. But yeah, it's just interesting to think. And I guess the problem is that they had to have their hands tied. But there are a lot of tokens in this set as well, and the fact you don't get any of them is a little bit jarring as well. Because especially if you get two different packs and they have two different sets of tokens that you don't have, there's 4 different tokens that are now potentially in play that you can't use. So maybe that's a slight oversight. But that's my only grumble I think I have about this product. Beyond
and as grumbles go, that's actually fairly.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. I don't think why print when you didn't have to. Why print a card that creates a token?
But I also think it's actually not that dire in terms of like the gameplay, right? You can use card backs.
Absolutely not. No, it's fine. It's fine.
So yeah, I think as long as people go into this not expecting even the competitive nature of say something like a draft where people still have archetypes, as long as you're just going in there looking to have fun, I would probably suggest doing it in multiple ways. I'd do it not looking at the packs and looking at the packs, because that way you get to kind of discover new favorites or
Yeah, I'd say definitely try, if you can, try and play with the format. Because I think one of the big things about these commanders that are new is that you would have been able to see them in context of how they're supposed to be used within a pack. Sometimes you see a new command, you think, oh, that's really cool, but it's in a limited environment that doesn't support it. Whereas as you're drafting it, you don't get all of the bits to show it off, so you never think about it again. Whereas these packs obviously are there to promote the gameplay and the themes. So if anything, these are probably the best ways to show off a commander that's being printed for the first time.
Sure. I mean, there are plenty of conspiracy-specific cards that I've never played because I've never drafted conspiracy. And when I see them on things like Scryfall or Gatherer, I'd love to play with them. So I'd love to do Jumpstart as it's meant to be played as well.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah,
cool.
Yeah, good job, supplemental product.
Yeah, very, very good. I'm looking forward to potentially getting my hands on it at least once in the coming years. We'll see what happens.
Absolutely, hopefully.
Cool. All right, guys. Well, that is our Jumpstart episode. A little bit lighter than our last sort of previous set reviews. If you want to shout out to us about your favourite legendaries from Jumpstart, let us know. Also, guys, by the time that this episode is out, we may have just about released our YouTube channel. Magic the Flavouring. We're not putting up all of our episodes on there. Future plans are to put up our interview episodes on there in the form of video, so you can listen to it on YouTube as well. We are looking to do cracker packs, but focusing on flavour, because obviously that's what we do. So check yeah, exactly, so check it out, guys. It'll be Magic the Flavouring. Any likes, subscribers, or general shares will be absolutely appreciated from our listeners, because it's more of us. And if you're listening to this, hopefully you like what we do. As we usually say, if you don't like what we do, we're not quite sure why you're here, but hello, thank you anyway. Check us out on Twitter, guys, at mtflavouring. My personal Twitter is at AndyManface. Nathan's, yours is
at the Fox in the Moon.
Emails go to mtflavouring@gmail.com. Nathan, any final words?
Doho Hidoro. It's a new Netflix that's out at the moment. If you like weird fantasy and don't mind a bit of gore, go and watch it. It's fucking amazing.
Doro Hidoro is amazing.
You've watched it as well?
I've seen it, yeah.
Oh, isn't it great? Like, there's something about it. I'm just like, because it's very weird and quirky. Normally, some anime, when it goes a bit too quirky, I'm like, oh, okay, this is a bit strange. Everything about the strangeness, I was like, but I want to know more. This is great. I love it. Yeah, go and watch it if you haven't. It's really good.
Go and watch Doro Hidoro. You won't be disappointed. It is mature content. Just a little warning.
Yeah, so cool.
Yeah, but other than that, guys, thank you so much for listening. This has been Magic the Flavouring.
We'll see you soon.